the college. We actually have several different campuses, but we have one right here in Truckee, and I'm the counselor there. I'm also a psychology professor there, and I teach psychology as well. But I wanted to talk tonight a little bit about Sierra College, but also about community college in general, so that you all can get a feel for what that option might be like, and if that's a great option for you or not. One of the things I find when talking to a lot of high school students is when you ask them, how do you feel about college, right? You get a variety of reactions, right? Some people are kind of like this. They're like, oh my God, it makes my head hurt to even think about it. I don't know exactly what I want to do, right? Others are like this. Others think, oh, college would be great, but I'm not college material. I don't have the money for college, or I didn't do well enough in high school to get into college, and so they can feel sad about it. Other students are like this. It's just, they're freaked out. It's scary for them. They're like, I don't know if I can do this. It sounds exciting, but it's also really scary at the same time. But a lot of people are left scratching their head. They get to their junior year, senior year, and they're kind of like, okay, I want to take this next step, but I'm not really sure where I want to go, how it all works, that kind of thing. So what I'm hoping tonight, when it comes to community college at least, that you'll end up excited about college, excited about the idea of it. Come on in, have a seat. And so that's what I'm shooting for, is to hopefully answer questions, find out, what questions you all have, and give you some information about Sierra College and about community colleges, so that it's something you're excited about. So one of the first questions, whether it's going to community college, going to a four-year college, oftentimes I get students saying, well, why bother? Why go to college? Or I have parents saying, I really want my student to go to college, but I'm having trouble convincing them. Right? And so I wanted to start by talking a little bit about why go to college. Right? One reason might be looking at the financial end of things. And so what this graph is showing is levels of education, starting at less than a high school diploma, going all the way up to a doctoral degree, different levels of education that you can obtain. And on this side, it's showing the weekly earnings, the average weekly earnings of somebody in the United States based on the degree that they have, right? And what you'll notice is that the more education you get, the more your income increases. And certainly these are averages, so you'll find, that millionaire who never finished high school, right? And you'll find that PhD student who's living on their parents' couch. But on average, right, the higher level education you get, the more income you will earn. And it jumps up when you start looking at high school, jumping up to an associate's degree and then a bachelor's degree. And I'll talk about these different degrees, but it's about $10,000 a year difference in income with each degree that somebody goes up. And so I always point out to students, that's $10,000 a year for every year that you work from then on, right? So that's a significant financial impact. On the other side here, you actually see unemployment rates based on education level. And whether it's fair or not, the reality is in our economy, when there's a downturn in the economy, the people with the least amount of education tend to lose jobs more often than people with higher levels of education. There's higher unemployment rates. And so when you think about careers and looking into the future, college can make a lot of sense for a lot of people. But that's kind of the numbers and sense of it. There's other reasons to go to college. One of them is the social aspects of college. There's a lot of social and emotional growth that happens at college. One of the nice things when students are in college, it's one of the last times that they're going to be surrounded by people their age, and there's usually a really diverse group of students at college. And so it's easy to connect with people and find people that they can make connections with. There's lots of extracurricular activities and things to do as well. And so there's a really big social part. I've been out of college 27 years now, and still my very best friends to this day are people that I met in college. And a lot of people, when I talk to them, that's the case for them. So there's a real benefit there as well. So let me talk a little bit about what community college is. And I'll start by talking about the different levels of education you can get in terms of higher education after high school. And so this pyramid kind of shows the main types of degrees you can get. So you can get certificates. And a certificate it's not a college degree, but it's a certificate of achievement showing that you've taken a certain number of classes in a specific area. And so it's a way to gain experience and knowledge in an area. And there are some careers where having that certificate can open the door into those careers. So for example, a student that I was working with last year who had finished her certificate in accounting, but hadn't finished her accounting degree yet, but she was able to get a great job here locally, making a better salary than she ever imagined she could because she had that certificate showing she had the experience in those accounting classes. And so some students will come for that training. And then the first college degree is what's called an associate's degree. It's often referred to as a 2-year degree because if a student is a full-time student, they can earn an associate's degree in 2 years. These two, the certificate and the associate's degree, are what community colleges offer. That's as high as you can go at Sierra College or at any of the California community colleges. The next level up is a bachelor's degree. So that's often referred to as a 4-year degree. So that's what a lot of your 4-year universities, so Sac State, Chico State, University of Nevada in Reno, those schools offer bachelor's degrees. And then your universities also offer graduate degrees. And so your master's degree and your doctorate degrees, your PhD, are graduate degrees that you would get with more years of school after your 4-year degree. And so you can kind of break it up into, you have community colleges for these certificates, this training specific to careers, and the associate's degrees, the 2-year degrees. Then your universities and colleges will have bachelor's and master's. And then your universities are where you'll find PhDs as well. Questions about different levels of education you can get after high school?
You guys know what AA and AS mean?
Associates of Arts and Associate of Science.
Okay, but do you know what that's what it means, but do you know what does it mean?
What's the difference?
It's basically where like you're studying either I'm trying to think of this way to describe this, like there's Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science, but it's 2 different kind of branches of fields. And science would be more like science, physics, chemistry, biology, those classes. While arts would be more, I'm not sure exactly what
Yeah, so at the associate degree level, the only difference between associates of arts and associates of science is whether you take a lab science class or not, whether you take a science that has a lab involved in it. And so, depending on, for example, if you are a history major, right, you can get actually either an AA or an AS, depending on whether you take a science that has a lab in it or not. But in general, yes, these associates of arts or the Bachelor of Arts degree will be less science focused than a science degree, a Bachelor's of Science.
So actually, what are the specific requirements for the AS degree?
Yes, so to get an associate's, they call it a 2-year degree, but really the requirement is 60 units. And so most of our classes are 3 units. And so full time as a student, would be doing 15 units each semester for 2 semesters. That's if you don't take summer classes. And you do that for 2 years, you get to that 60 units. And then a bachelor's degree is 120 units. And so that's why it's called a 4-year degree often. But yeah, that's the difference, is the number of units. And then within that 60 units for an associate's degree, it's a combination of 3 things. There's classes in your major, and then there's general education classes. And then if there's room, there's electives, which don't fall into either of those categories. And one of the things that I do when students decide to come and they come to Sierra College, as a counselor there, I'll meet with students and explain how all this works. Because a lot of students come to us not knowing exactly what's involved in getting a degree. And I'll sit down and talk with them and explain, okay, here's what the classes would be for whatever major you're interested in. Here's what a general ed pattern looks like in the classes you can choose to meet that general ed requirement. And then if there's room, other classes fit as electives. And then we can actually build an academic plan for a student that says, here's what you need to do all the way to graduation, and have that for them.
And then how many classes? You said just one, to get the AS? How many
So to get the
science
AS,
classes?
on average, it ends up being about 20 classes. So 5 in the fall semester, 5 in the spring semester of your first year, and then 5 in the fall and 5 in the spring of your next year.
Are you asking compared to the AA? Or?
Yeah,
Okay.
like what are
So
the
it sounds like just that one lab.
science requirements?
Oh, yeah. So the only difference would be a 1-credit lab. So
So
for
that's like, why wouldn't you get an AS versus an AA? Yeah, what's the benefit of either, like for transferring purposes?
Right. So for transferring purposes, the transfer general ed pattern requires a lab science anyway. So anybody who's coming to us who wants to transfer ends up getting an AS because they're going to take that lab anyway.
Okay, got it.
But if a student's not planning to transfer and they're coming in and they don't want to take a lab, they can get an associate's degree without taking a lab science. Yeah, great questions. Other questions?
Y son las mismas clases de un comunitario a una de 4 años. Y mira, son las
De los
mismas
primeros años, ¿sí?
clases.
He wants to know if the classes that they're taking the first 2 years in a university are the same classes they will be taking here, those 2 years of community college.
Yeah, so oftentimes students will come to us for the first 2 years and then they will transfer to a university. What they take with us, those classes transfer and those units transfer. What we do is try to help students plan well, because when you transfer into a specific major, and you have to have done the correct courses in your first 2 years to be able to start with the upper division classes in that major. And so that's part of that planning process, is I sit down, and if a student comes in and says, hey, I want to start here and then go to Sac State or UC Davis, we look at what they require for the major at that school and make sure we plan the right classes here to get there.
And one kind of confusing thing sometimes for people that they don't always realize is that it's not 2 plus 4 for that 4-year degree. You're going to complete the first 2 years worth at, say, Sierra College, and then you'll complete essentially your major requirements for those second 2 years equivalent at the university level. So it can be a total of 4 years total for that bachelor's degree. So it's not 6. Okay, it's not additive.
And this kind of leads into what we've been talking about already in terms of why might a student decide to start at community college versus going straight to the 4-year college. And there's a variety of reasons. One of them is the options that you have. Because coming to a community college, you can get a certificate and go right into the workforce, with that certificate if it fits well. Or you can get a degree, and we talked about the different associate's degrees you can get. Or you can come and start with us, get your first 2 years of a 4-year degree done, and then transfer on to get that 4-year degree. One of the things that a lot of people don't know, it's not in there anymore, is that actually at the UCs, so if you look at UC Berkeley, UCLA, UC Davis, 1 in 3 students that are at the UCs started at a California community college. And so it's really common that students will go to community college for the first 2 years and then transfer. And in fact, sometimes we've had students come to us who wanted to go to a really top elite school, and they weren't able to get into it right out of high school because it's incredibly competitive. But it's actually easier to transfer in. And so they came to us because they had their heart set on this particular school, and then took their classes, got good grades with us, and then were able to get into that school and transfer in. Well, I'm talking about transfer too. The one thing that's not on that other slide is we have a degree that's called an associate's degree for transfer. And this confuses a lot of people when they look at the catalog, because they think they have to get one of those degrees to transfer, and you don't. What you need to do to transfer is meet the minimum transfer requirements for the school you want to go to. The associate's degree for transfer is a special agreement that is between the California community colleges and the CSU system, so the California state universities. And what you get is some benefits. If you get an associate's degree for transfer and you transfer to a CSU in the same major, then it gives you some benefits. And those benefits are, one, that you are guaranteed admission to one of the CSUs. Not necessarily one of your choice, but you're guaranteed admission to one of them. And then it gives you some benefits that help you get into the one of your choice. For example, it gives you a GPA bump. So it takes your grade point average and gives you a little additional bump to that to make your grade point average a little bit better, which makes you more competitive with other people trying to get into that program. And then one of the really big things it does is if you transfer from a California community college to a CSU and stay in the same major, they guarantee that the classes you need to finish your bachelor's degree in 2 more years will be available to you. Even if they have to create a class just for you, they'll do it. Because what was happening is some students were getting their associate's degree, transferring to a 4-year school, and then they couldn't get the classes they needed to graduate in 2 more years, and it was taking them 3 or 4 more years. And so this helps alleviate that problem. But just to put it out there, if you see the associate's degree for transfer, it's a wonderful thing if you're trying to transfer to a CSU. If you're transferring anywhere else, like to one of the UCs or to an out-of-state school or a private school, whether you have the associate's degree for transfer or not doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all.
So the guarantee is only the CSU system then for classes, getting your classes?
No, for this, if you get the associate's degree for transfer, it has a guarantee with the CSUs. We have another program with the UCs, which is called a transfer admission guarantee, or it's called TAG for short. And what a TAG is with the UC systems, after you've finished your first year at a community college, you can set up a tag with the UCs, which basically says, if I take these classes and I get these grades in my second year, I'm guaranteed admission into that school. And you can tag at all the UCs except for Berkeley and UCLA. They don't do tags. But then the vast majority of our classes are transferable, meaning those credits will go to any school. It doesn't matter what degree program or transfer program you're in. Yeah, good questions. Other questions about transferring? So some other reasons you might consider community college, right? Again, if you look at the dollars and cents of it, right? This is, the dark blue is the national average cost for a community college, a state university, or the UC system. And then the light blue is in California. And so you'll see that California community colleges are much less expensive than even the CSUs, and the CSUs are much less expensive than the UCs. And so on average, students can save around $15,000 by starting at a community college, which is a great savings, right? That has in this last year become even better in that we've just started a program that we have at Sierra College, and it's actually based on a state law. So different community colleges are implementing it different ways, but all the California community colleges should be implementing it, where your first 2 years are completely free. And so if you come to Sierra College and you meet the basic criteria, then your first 2 years will be free. Those basic criteria are that you are a first-time college student, meaning you haven't attended college anywhere else after high school. If you take classes in college while you're still in high school, then you're still considered a first-time student when you come out. And you have to be full-time. I mentioned full-time being 15 units a semester for 4 semesters to graduate in 2 years. Full-time for this program is 12 units a semester. So students could do 12 units in the fall, 12 in the spring, take a summer class, and then do 12 in the fall, 12 in the spring or summer class, and they still qualify for the first 2 years free. And that's completely free tuition. Yes?
So by free, you mean just the courses we take, or?
The tuition is free. Yeah, the only thing you would have to pay on top of that at Sierra College, you have to pay a $26 health center fee each semester, and then you would pay for your books. But a lot of instructors are trying to move away from textbooks that you buy, and you can actually see on our schedule which classes have free textbooks, and a lot of them do now have free textbooks as well. But some don't. There's some classes where you're still unfortunately going to find that $100 textbook, that you need to buy.
And your room and board. So that's tends to be the most expensive part about going to a lot of colleges, but especially like compared to tuition at like say a junior college, that room and board is going to cost $10,000 to $15,000 a year, depending on where you go.
On top of tuition.
Yeah, so in addition to tuition, so that's, yeah, so you're not gonna go to Santa Barbara and live for free, but you can potentially go to Santa Barbara, Truckee, or Sacramento and attend school for free.
Right. And a lot of our students, one of the reasons is that they come also is because they want to stay in the local community. They're living at home, and so they have free room and board. And then you add free tuition on top of it, and now you actually can get an associate's degree for pretty much free in California, which is great.
And that's taking 30 units a year.
And that's taking, yes, 30 units a
You have to
year.
maintain that 30 units.
Yeah, you have to be full-time, and you
24 to
20
meet this
yeah, so you have to do the 12 and 12. You don't have to do the summer
You
part.
don't have to do just at least 12 and 12, but most classes are 5 units, right?
Most are 3 units.
3.
Yeah, we're on a semester system versus a quarter system. And so so it's usually going to be, to meet this requirement, usually students are doing 4 classes a semester. But if you did 4 classes a semester, you would get your first 2 years free, but you're still going to have another semester before you can graduate to get to that 60. And so that's why the recommendation is doing 5 classes a semester or 15 units a semester, because then you can finish your whole degree for free in that 2 years. Does that make sense? Yeah.
But you could do summer school too, and then that would make up the difference if you just did 12.
Exactly. You could do 12, 12, add some summer school, and it'll all be free. Yep. Beyond the financial piece of why go to community college, another reason is that a lot of our instructors are working in the field they're teaching, as opposed to just having teaching being their focus. And so you get a lot of hands-on experience from our instructors. So for example, if you take our mechatronics class, you're working with an electrical engineer who has his own business doing that all the time, right? All of our psychology professors either have or currently have or have had private practices as therapists. And so the instructors have a lot of hands-on experience, which is really helpful, especially if you want to stay in the community and then work in that field. They have a lot of connections, in that field. Another advantage is, especially if you're on our campus and you take classes, they're going to look more like this and less like this. So if you take Introduction to Psychology example this semester, you have 17 students in the class. If you took Intro to Psychology at UC Davis, you'd have 450 students in the class. And so if you're a student that likes that small class size environment, community college can be a great way to go. Once you get into your upper division, your last 2 years of a 4-year school, you tend to get into smaller classes again because now you're really in those higher level classes in your major. But your introductory classes at a big school are going to be really big classes, whereas at community college, they tend to be much smaller. And because of that, you can get a lot of personal attention. Okay? And so it's really easy to connect with your instructors. All of our instructors are there because they love to teach. They're not there because they're going to get rich doing it. They're there because they love to help students teach, and they're really accessible, which is really nice. And then the last thing I'll say about this is to kind of dispel a myth. There's a little bit of a myth that community college professors are teaching there because they couldn't get a job at a big university. And that's not the reality. The reality is, for the most part, most community college professors are teaching at community college because, one, they feel really connected to the system for some whatever personal reason. They like the opportunities that it gives people, but also because they love to teach. Because when you are a professor at a 4-year university, you have a lot of pressure to do research and to publish. And so that's a big part of your job, is doing your research and publishing. And so you actually don't teach as much. Where at a community college, there isn't that pressure to research and publish. And so they're all there because they love to teach. And we get really high quality professors. For example, this is Kurt Heisinger. He teaches our business classes. He's holding up a textbook, which is a managerial accounting textbook. It's used all over the country. He wrote it. So he knows the stuff really well. And so, our instructors also live in this community, and so they know what it's like to live in the Tahoe Truckee area, and that's really helpful in classes as well. So you can get really high quality teaching. As I mentioned, Sierra College has 3 campuses. The Tahoe Truckee, we actually have 4 campuses. But the Tahoe Truckee campus is one of the smallest campuses. We have about 450 to 500 students here. To give you a difference in size, the Rockland campus is our main campus. There's about 17,000 students on the Rockland campus. So one of the big advantages up here is that you get that nice, very small school environment, but you have all the resources of a very big school, right? So for example, this is the library. This is our campus in Tahoe. If you haven't been to our campus, please come visit. It's a beautiful building, and it's just the one building, right? This is the library in Rockland. And this is a campus map of the Rockland campus. But the awesome thing is we can get any book from this library sent up to us in 2 days, right? So you have this connection to all these wonderful resources, but you have this really small school environment. So it's one of the nice advantages we have up here. What can you study? So these are the majors that you can complete the entire major, taking every single class here on campus at Sierra College in Truckee. That list expands a lot. These are majors that you can major in Sierra College as a whole. And so the classes that you take, it doesn't matter what campus you take them at, they work anywhere. And so sometimes students will be Tahoe Truckee campus students, and they'll take all their general ed with us because you can complete any of the general ed patterns on our campus, and some of the classes from their major. And then they may have, depending on the major, they may have to go to Rockland to take a class or two from their major. But that other list I was showing you, these majors, you can complete the entire major with every class being on campus in Truckee. But you can major in just about anything that you would want to major in. Questions on why you might want to go to community college or some of the benefits that community colleges offer?
So what extracurricular activities do you have, like the campus environment? And,
Yes.
you know, yeah, can you?
Great question. So it is one of the challenges of community college because we don't have dorms on this campus. We don't have students living there. But we do have, we have a lecture series where there's somebody, an expert coming in to talk about something, and students can do that. We have clubs on campus. So we, and it varies which ones we have because with a 2-year program, students are coming and going. But we have an active business club that's always active. We have an outdoor club that tends to be pretty active. We've had a environmentally conscious students club, a mindfulness club. So we have a variety of different clubs that students can join. Students can also start clubs really easily. All it takes is 4 students with an interest. And if they come talk to me, I can help them start a club. We have an art show. We do something called the Sierra Showcase, which is a chance for students to showcase their learning, and people from all over the community will come to it. We have a Frisbee golf course right there on campus. We don't have any of the organized athletics up here. The main campus has soccer, football, all of that down there.
Like, so you don't have a softball team or?
We don't.
Like just
We were actually just talking the other day about trying to start some Sierra College teams that were part of the rec program, for the different rec leagues that Tahoe Truckee has, but we don't, as we're not big enough, to have it up here. But yeah, the Rockland campus, because it's much bigger, has a lot more of that than we do up here. And students from our campus are welcome to go and participate in any of that. I mean, I think there's, I want to say 50 clubs on the Rockland campus, and students can go down there if they want. My experience is it's hard to convince students to drive over the hill to go down. But yeah, so we try to have as much of that as we can, but it is one of the challenges for sure. If a student really wants that live on campus, big campus environment, community college is probably not the best fit. Although I will say, and I think there's a slide about it later, Sierra College is one of the only colleges and community colleges in California that has dorms. We have dorms on the Rockland campus, so students can live down there.
Highly coveted, but.
Yes, a little hard to get into. They're building brand new ones, but that won't be for another 4 years. I do encourage students, once you enroll, if you come to Sierra College, to make sure you take advantage of the opportunities that are there. I mentioned the campus clubs some. We do an on-campus orientation that students get a letter inviting them to come to, and I highly recommend students come to that. It's mostly about getting to know other new students that are there, so that when you start your first week of class, you already have some familiar faces and know some people. It's also a way to learn about the different resources that we have on campus. And so I definitely encourage students to do that. We have a mentor program where new students get connected with a faculty member. And it's not necessarily someone they're taking classes with. It just gives them an extra person that they've met that they can go and talk to and ask questions and find out resources, that kind of thing. And then we do have tutoring. We have free on-campus tutoring. We have online tutoring. I also run a whole series of what are called success workshops, everything from how to read textbooks effectively to stress management and time management, all that kind of thing. A great way to find out about what's going on campus is to like the Tahoe Truckee campus Facebook page. It's the only way you can get really campus-specific information, but all those workshops are constantly posted on there, the guest lectures, all the things that are happening on campus get posted on that Facebook page as well. No, there it is. There's our dorm in Rockland. And so we do have a dorm, and students can apply to get into that dorm. And sometimes students who need to finish up classes down there for a major, will stay up here for a year, and then they'll go down and try to get into the dorms down there. They're a really good deal. It's about $3,700 per semester, which includes your food. So that includes a meal plan. There's a cafeteria there and all that kind of thing. But you do have to really be on top of it getting into them. And so if you're interested in dorms, let me know, and I can explain that whole process and how to get into them, because you really have to be there the day of to get into it.
So when is that? When do you have to enroll, like name on the list?
So there's not a specific day that's published until people send in, there's a dorm application. And if you go onto our website and look under student services and dorms, you'll find that application. And you send that in saying that you're interested in the dorms. And then they send out an email on a specific day, and they'll give us a time range of when it generally is, but they won't tell us a specific day. And so we tell students, be on top of your email. And then when that email comes out saying, here's your, it's a commitment form basically saying that you're actually going to do it, you have to get that into them, and they take the first 150 or how many spots they are. And you have to be there to hand it to them. And
So it's really tough. Like
it's tough.
It's very competitive
Yeah.
to get in.
And I have had a handful of students up here who have wanted to get into the dorms and have gotten into the dorms. So it's not impossible, but it's tough, for sure. There's also tons of other, housing there locally that's much less expensive than housing up here. That's one of our big challenges up here is students that aren't living at home being able to afford housing, in this area. It's easier to find apartments and that kind of stuff around Rockland than it is up here.
So, but that's more of the campus feel, I take it, right? That
Yes.
is a real community, like college community.
Exactly. It's a dorm on a college campus, and there's events going on all the time and that kind of thing.
And so there, do you have a swim team and just
Yep.
and different?
We've got a swim team, the gymnasium, the pool. We've got a football team, a football stadium, soccer, all that kind of stuff.
And there's like a drama. Is it drama?
There's a huge theater department. They're putting on plays. They have musical performances. There's a huge art department. And you see art displayed all over the place. They have art shows, and yeah, it's definitely a bigger field because it's a much bigger student
Right. How
population.
many students?
About 17,000. Yeah. So I also wanted to mention the academic enrichment program, if you haven't heard about that. And so what that is a partnership between Sierra College and the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District. And so that allows high school students in the school district to take classes at Sierra College for free while they're in high school. And you earn dual credit. So you can earn credit toward graduation from high school, but you also earn college credit, which gives you a little bit of a leg up. If you take some classes before you start college, then you start college with some credits already under your belt. And that gives you a little more flexibility in terms of classes to get to that 60 units. We've had students who have come out of the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District with enough college credits that they had an entire year of college done before they got there. Right? Now that's definitely the exception, not the norm. But even just having one class or two classes under your belt before you get there can be really helpful. It's also a nice way for students to see what a college class is like, because suddenly you go from a high school environment to being on a college campus, taking classes that are, all adults and everybody's treated like an adult, so we don't have much in the way of behavior management problems or that kind of stuff. And so sometimes that can be eye-opening and nice for students to see. With that, it starts by talking to your high school counselor, so talking to Mr. Ream about what classes would make sense to take, to make sure that what you're taking fits with what you need for high school, that kind of thing. But it's a great program. Students can take up to 7 units a semester, and they can start actually as early as their freshman year if they are academically prepared, and that's part of the conversation to have here at the high school, is if you're ready for the college classes. So that's a great program, and those classes are free for students as well. I think that's some of what I just talked about. Kind of gives you that head start, saves you some money in terms of having credits under your belt already. So how do you enroll? If you decide you want to come to Sierra College, it's really easy. You just go to our website, which is sierracollege.edu, and you click on the apply button. There's one there and there's one there on our homepage. The nice thing is there's no essays to write. It's not a competitive process. Anybody who is over 18 or has graduated from high school who applies will get in. And so it's just a matter of filling out the forms and doing that. So that's where it all starts. What the process looks like is you'll first complete that online application. So then you have a student number and you're in our system. Then you can submit transcripts to us, especially if there's AP classes or things you took in high school that are going to help you in terms of college. You'll want to send those transcripts in. We have a student portal called My Sierra, and so once you have applied, you get instructions on how to get into that student portal. So you'll want to activate that. There's an online orientation that you do, and I mentioned the on-campus orientation. And then I always recommend students come meet with me. You don't have to do that. People can navigate it all on their own if they'd like to. But too often I have students who have been there a year and then they come meet with me for the first time and they realize they could have done things much more efficiently if they knew how it all worked from the beginning. And so I really encourage students to come sit down with me. I'll explain all the things you need to know about how to get a degree. We can map out the classes that you need, all of that type of thing as well. And then you register for classes, and you'll do that through the My Sierra. Once you know what classes you're going to take, you'll go in there and actually register for the classes. As an academic enrichment student, you do need to get a form signed by the high school counselor and by your parents, and then you bring that to us, and then you can do the registration process. Spring class registration begins on November 13th. And so that's when academic enrichment students could start. So anybody who's a current high school student who wants to take classes in the spring, you can register starting on the 13th. You don't have to register on the 13th. Our on-campus classes, one of the other advantages of being a small campus is they don't fill up right away. If you take online classes, we do have a lot of online classes as well. Those do fill up right away because you're competing with all 17,000 students in Rockland to get into them. The sooner you register, the more likely you are to get the classes that you want. And so you want to make sure to register soon, but you don't have to be stressed about getting in there on the 13th to register. And then our registration for our summer and fall classes will start in April. Usually it's around the 3rd week in April. That if you wanted to take classes in the fall, you would actually can start registering for them in late April. Our spring semester starts on January 27th of 2020, not 19. The last thing I'll mention on here, close to the last thing, is financial aid. I mentioned the first 2-year free program, right? Not everybody wants to or is able to be a full-time student, but don't worry, there is still financial aid available even if you are not a full-time student. And so financial aid starts with doing what's called the FAFSA. If you qualify for federal financial aid, you do it through the FAFSA. or you can do it through the California DREAM Act. If you don't have a social security number to do it through FAFSA, you can fill out the DREAM Act information. And there's financial aid available. What happens is once you fill out the FAFSA or the DREAM Act, that information goes to Sierra College's financial aid department. They look at it and then they send you an email and tell you what you're eligible for. Most of that financial aid in terms of grants and that kind of stuff is based on family income. And so you have to meet certain income criteria for that. The first 2-year free program doesn't depend on income at all. It doesn't matter what your income is. You can qualify for that. This is our front desk. Not a great picture of our front desk, but it's our front desk. And one of the things, the reason I put that up there is I encourage you, if you have any questions, if you're trying to work through the application process or registration for classes or anything like that, please just stop by. We have both English and Spanish speakers at our front desk, and we help people go through the enrollment process all the time. There's computers right there, so you could come in and just hop on the computer, start working on it, and as questions come up, ask those questions, and we can certainly help with that. And so please don't hesitate to stop in and ask questions. Often I get questions about enrollment processes at other schools. So there are 113 community colleges in California. So Sierra College is just one option. The enrollment process is going to be similar at all of the community colleges. Each one's going to have its unique little pieces and twists, so you'll want to check with that school, but it's going to be pretty similar for all of them. One of the things is sometimes community colleges will have agreements with local universities, and so it'll be easier to transfer in, but that's not always the case. And so sometimes I've had students say, hey, I'm going to this community college because it's right next to the four-year school that I want to go to. And then they got there and found out there weren't any local agreements between the two. So it's always a good thing to ask about first. Sierra College, for example, has local agreements with Sac State. And then the Tahoe Truckee campus, but not the Rockland campus, has an agreement with Chico that makes it really easy for students to transfer into Chico from up here because we're considered in the local area for Chico.
And UNR too, you do have that.
And so we have lots of students that go to UNR all the time. And so we have transfer agreements with UNR. And they also have a tuition reduction program for California residents that if you have to have a certain GPA for it, but if you have it 3.24, I think, GPA, then when you transfer in, you qualify for the WUI, which is the Western Undergraduate Exchange, I think, which brings the tuition down $10,000 at UNR, which makes it so you're basically paying in-state tuition at UNR. But it is dependent on GPA, so I always tell students when they first come in, if you want to transfer to UNR, make sure you're keeping above a 3.25 GPA because it'll save you a ton of money. Yeah.
So what, do you know off the top of your head, like what other community colleges have dorms like you do in Rockland?
One where I grew up. No one wants to go there though. Coalinga, California, West Hills College.
Yeah.
They
They have dorms.
dorms?
Yep. Don't go there.
I think I don't know the
Middle
other
of
ones, but I think there's only 2 or 3. There's not very
Like
many
cows and I find.
that have dorms. Because part of the philosophy of community college is it's for people living in that community. And so that's part of what makes it rare that they have dorms.
Right. I'm just looking for that college experience.
Right.
Community
College price.
Right. And,
Yeah. Yeah. So what other questions do people have?
I have a question about, with somebody that had a son that was transferring, there's some form that you have to fill out that's really important when you transfer. It's an acronym,
Coming into Sierra College or transferring out of Sierra College?
and he said you have to be on that. It's got an acronym.
So I'm not sure without more details about that, but there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle when it comes to transferring out. There's something called major preparation, which is the classes you need to take in your first 2 years in order to go into the major you want. And there's a website called assist.org that helps you see what the major preparation is. And it changes by major and it changes by school. And so that helps for the California schools, and there's a separate program for UNR. There's also the transfer admission guarantees I mentioned with the UCs. And so they end up having a form that says, okay, here's the classes you have to take to get that guarantee. There's also different general ed patterns, depending on where you want to transfer. You want to use a specific general ed pattern in order to have the general eds done for the school that you want to go to. And so that's where I do workshops on transfer at the college, but also I just really recommend students come in and sit down with me, tell me, okay, here's where I want to go and here's what I want to major in, and then I can help them see exactly what they need to do in order to get there.
And pretty much every community college has that.
Yeah, every community college is going to have counselors that can help with that, because it's a complicated process, because it's different for every school you transfer to, and every major within that school is going to be different too. Yeah. Other questions?
¿Qué diferencia hay cuando quieren agarrar clases por Unilay y ir al colegio?
¿Clase por qué?
Unilay, por computadora.
Oh, okay. ¿Cuál es la diferencia? What's the difference when the student want to take online classes versus in-person classes?
Great question. So online classes are great because they give you the flexibility of not having to go to campus, but they are still going to have the same academic requirements as an in-class class. And so they try to make them as interactive as possible. So they'll have videos to watch and discussion boards where students need to go in and talk to each other and that kind of thing. In general, online classes actually tend to be harder than on-campus classes. And I see students get themselves in trouble with online classes from time to time. The big thing is students need to be really good at time management, and they need to be really good at self-motivation. If they struggle with either of those things, then online classes can be challenging, because what happens is oftentimes students say, oh, it's my online class, I'll do it when I get to it. And then they never get to it. And that's a challenge. And it is flexible in terms of when you do your work during the week, but most of them have things that need to be done each week. And if you miss a week or two, you can't go backwards and catch up. And so I've had students who've gotten themselves in trouble that way, where they said, oh, it's my online class, I'll get to it later. 3-4 weeks of the semester went by and they decided to go start doing their online stuff, and they had already lost so many points that they couldn't pass the class. And so they need to really stay on top of it. What I usually tell students is, if you have both on-campus and online classes, treat your online class like an on-campus class and just schedule time in your own life when you're going to sit down and focus on that class. And then each week come to the computer lab and sit down and work on it, because that way you're more likely to stay up with it and not fall behind. But there's another probably 8 majors that you can complete the major on our campus by taking just 1 or 2 online classes. And so a lot of students will end up taking online classes to do that. And it works fine as long as they really stay on top of it.
Gracias.
Yeah. Other questions?
So do you have to declare a major to graduate, to transfer in 2 years? Like, or do you just, can you give me an idea of what are the general education classes you would take your first year
Yeah,
at Sierra College? Like, my son has no idea what he wants to do.
Okay.
Right? So he's just gonna take general education classes, get his GE started.
Right. So one of the things, there's a big push in California now toward doing more career exploration on the front end, because you can go through the college system, whether it's a 2-year or a 4-year, much more efficiently the sooner you know your major. And so we do career counseling there on campus. We have a really robust career coach website that helps. And I tell students, usually you can get away with a semester, maybe even 2, depending on what you decide to major in, without knowing your major. But if you go beyond that first year, you run a really high risk of taking longer to get done, because some majors have classes that stack on each other. So for example, if you want to be an accounting major, you have to take business 1, 2, and 3. You have to take business 1 before you can take business 2. You have to take 2 before you can take 3. So if you wait till your second year and then say, I want to be an accounting major, that's wonderful, but you're not going to be able to finish in that second year. You're going to have to do another semester. Whereas if you decide that earlier, it works better. And so certainly he could come not knowing, and that's fine. And I would encourage them and work with them on trying to figure out that in that first semester or two. In terms of the general ed, the way the general ed classes work is within any particular general ed pattern, and there's 3 different patterns you can use for your associate's degree, depending on if you want to stop there, go to a CSU, or go to a UC. It's divided up into categories, and then there's certain number of credits that are needed in each category. So for example, everybody needs a college level math class. Everybody needs a college level English class, if not 2, depending on the pattern. And then the sciences, if you're not planning on transferring, you just need 1 science class. If you are planning on transferring, you need a physical science and a life science. And then there's a humanities category, and that's broken up into the arts and humanities. And so you need 3 classes in the arts and humanities combined, and there's 50 classes to choose from in there. And then there's social sciences, and you need 3 social science classes. And so that's going to be psychology, history, economics, those kinds of classes. And then depending on the pattern, there's either a language requirement or a communications requirement. So there's these different categories, but then within each of those categories, there's a lot of different classes that will work to meet that category requirement. And so, as I said, on our campus up here, we have something, if not multiple classes for every single category. So you can complete all the general eds. And so it's a matter of sitting down and looking at our class schedule and then seeing what's going to fit. And there's some things that I recommend students start with in that first semester. Like if they haven't done a college level English class, I recommend that because all their other classes they're going to have to write papers for. And that English 1A is a composition class that's all about writing good papers. Math, if they're going to be in the STEM area at all, the science and technology area, they need to start their math as soon as possible because math stacks on itself. And so it really kind of depends on where they think they might want to go. But they could definitely do a first semester of taking things they're interested in that fit in the different general ed categories and still be fine with, finishing that 2-year part in 2 years and transferring on. But when you transfer into a specific major because in the California schools, you have to complete 60 units before you transfer. So you're coming in as a junior. All the California schools require you to declare your major by your junior year. And that's where that major prep comes in because you may decide, hey, I really want to transfer to this school. But if you haven't done what you need to do to be ready to go into that major, you won't be able to go into that major. So then it'll take you 3 years at that school instead of 2 to finish. So that's where that career exploration early on really, really helps. And I also tell students, though, you're picking what you're interested in now. The reality is about 75% of people in the workforce aren't working in the area they studied for their bachelor's degree. You learn a lot in college. There's a lot of value to getting a degree, regardless of what your major is, just in terms of your communication skills, your critical thinking skills, that type of thing. And so sometimes students put a ton of pressure on themselves. Oh my God, I've got to get it right the first time because this is the rest of my life. And then they don't decide on anything because that's too much pressure. And so sometimes it's taking a little of that pressure away and say, no, you got to decide this path for now. And the more confident you are in it, the better, but it's okay. It's not going to be for the rest of your life necessarily. But it depends on the direction you go. Yeah. Great questions. Other questions? Okay.
I have a couple tips for you.
Yeah, please.
Just from the high school perspective and working on the other side of the desk, a couple things that really stick out that you guys also should know, whether you're a senior or younger. One of the biggest things that I see students being successful really at any level, but especially in like a junior college setting, but any four-year college applies as well, is really that self-advocacy piece. In high school, we kind of have you as a captive audience in this building for 6 or 6.5 hours a day. And we have the ability to just send you a little yellow slip and call you down to the office if we need to talk to you, or if we think you might need some help, or decision-making steps and things like that to help you plan your schedule or plan your next piece in your life. That's kind of the case sometimes in colleges, but more likely than not, it's typically here is your options. We have a lot of resources available to you, and it kind of becomes up to the individual student to take advantage of the resources and utilize them. That was my experience in college, that I didn't take advantage, and I wish I would have. Didn't use office hours. I didn't use my advisors, and it it impacted my ability to get through in a timely and efficient manner. And so definitely, as we go through and you get into this kind of like for seniors, at least getting into this college decision timeline, like now is when we need to start thinking about, okay, what are my resources? Do I need to maybe set up a meeting with Christopher and looking at some of these different things before I need to, because you said registration for the fall, if you're a senior and you're going to go in the fall, you're picking your classes before you even graduate high school. If you want to do it well and maybe get all the classes that you need. So that might be something that you start kind of mulling around in your brain is, okay, after I register, it might be time to reach out to Christopher and see what that timeline looks like for me. So that I'm prepared come April to get all the courses that I need. So that's a big thing, is really that self-advocacy piece.
Yeah, and I'll just echo that. I tell students, we tend to run on the idea that no news is good news. So if we're not hearing from a student, we assume they're doing well, right? Everybody's an adult. We treat them like adults and expect them to be doing their thing without us kind of looking over their shoulder. And we have a ton of resources to help. And so if students ask for help, we have a lot of things we can do to help students be successful. But that is a big difference. They need to come and ask. And so I really, from the first time I meet with students, oftentimes high school students will come with their parent, which is fine. But one of the things I always tell them at the beginning is, hey, this is different than high school in that you have the option of whether your parent's here or not. And they can ask their parent to wait outside or they can invite their parent in. It's up to them. And the reason I do that is to get students to start to self-advocate because their parents aren't going to be there to do it all for them throughout college. They need to start taking that responsibility early on.
So if they were to meet with you, it would be something where they've already filled out the application, they're going to get accepted anyway, and then they can use your services?
Yeah, I will meet with students who are just trying to figure things out, even if they don't know they're going to come to us. They can call and set up an appointment and just say, hey, I'm exploring Sierra College as a possibility. I'd love to come talk about it. But if they know they want to come take classes, then yes, having done the application gives them a student number, gets them in our system. So then when I'm working with them, I can actually put notes into a program where they can then see it. And I can make that map and everything, and they'll be able to see it. If they haven't applied yet, then I can't do any of that. And so it's more just a conversation to answer questions, which is also helpful. But yeah, if they know they're going to take classes, it's better to have already applied and be in the system.
And that's April, right? You have to register in April for the.
Starting. Yeah.
That's when you start registering for classes. It's going to be late April. It's usually around the 24th, 25th, something like that. But you could apply sooner than that.
Fall.
For the fall semester. Yeah. Yeah, I think the fall application's open now, actually. You could apply now for the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I already did it.
Yeah.
I'm happy to, if you guys get through that application or get stuck, you can ask either of us. We're happy to help you, right? The last thing that I'll mention, unless you guys have other questions for either of us, is really kind of just this idea that our goal here at North Tahoe High School, and I would say many high schools, is really to give you guys a buffet of options. And really the goal is to keep all of your options open. I think community college is for everybody if they want it, and it's really about deciding what option you want to pursue, whether that's from an academic standpoint, whether that's from a major that they might be offering or a financial standpoint. So we encourage students, if you want to apply to four-year college, awesome. If you want to apply to junior college, that's awesome as well. We want you guys to have that myriad of different choices come the end of spring to be able to look at and do that shopping comparison to see what might be nice. The other great thing that I didn't hear, but I think is important to know is that a lot of times students that are in high school, they might not have had maybe a great start or even a great high school experience necessarily. That doesn't mean that they're not cut out for college. It might mean that our high school environment or a high school environment was not the right fit or wasn't the right time they've grown or developed. The other nice thing about the junior college process in particular is that, like Christopher said, it's not a non-competitive admissions environment for the general programs. And so it doesn't matter, as long as you've graduated from high school, you could have a 1.5 GPA technically and be able to attend. And as long as you have the skills needed to be successful in college, you can have a 4.0 at Sierra College and go anywhere that you would like. And that's it kind of wipes that slate clean. The other piece that's also vital is that some people have this anxiety about SATs or ACTs and don't get me started on kind of that piece. It's a very complex and controversial area. But if you're in a place where testing is not your strong suit, that's a big deal in that four-year college world. it's not required to gain entry. It can help in some financial scholarships and stuff like that in different areas, but it's not required for admissions. And basically, it's not required for transfer admissions either. Okay, so you're going to be judged, for lack of a better word, based on the coursework that you've taken and how well you achieve in that coursework to get into your CSU, UC, private school, four-year college if that was your goal. Okay, so it takes some of that pressure off of people to kind of be perfect in high school.
It's
So
a
you
great
don't
fresh
really
start.
have to- You don't have to take the SAT to transfer.
Not
Is that what you're saying?
Nope.
You
really
don't.
As long as you
Once-
get a GPA, you have the right
Yeah.
courses.
They don't look at SAT scores at all for transfers. It's not even part of the application process.
So it's a big difference, but it's something to consider. It kind of gives you a fresh start if that wasn't your necessarily experience that you had in high school.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It is that great opportunity. And I know lots of people who have gone on to get PhDs from Berkeley, for example, who didn't do well in high school and took a couple of years off even, and then went to community college and then got their 4-year and then went on to elite schools and did amazing. So it's a good opportunity for that.
Well, thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it. I have Christopher's contact information. I think you brought some information up here if you'd like to pick anything up. Feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions or things like that. But thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much. And there's a copy of the spring schedule up here. And then there's a little handout of facts about Sierra College and pens and pencils and all that kind of thing.
And what's your last name again?
It's OLD, OLD.